Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Today we're going over new sauropod as well as a theropod and apparently a bison situation over in Europe. And we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. So from Sci News, newly discovered long-necked dinosaur survived early Jurassic global warming. So paleontologists in Argentina have identified a new species of sauropod or true sauropod dinosaur that lived 179 million years ago, just after the mysterious disappearance of non-EU sauropodomorphs. So this is probably shortly after the prosauropods or the smaller sauropodomorphs went extinct. So animals related to the Plateosaurus or Massospondylus, Mosasaurus, and prosauropods practically covered every continent back in the Triassic as well as the early Jurassic periods. So, from about 235 million years ago to about 180 to 185 million years ago is when the prosauropods reigned. There were a wide variety of different species. Many were bipedal, so strictly only walking on two legs. And as well, you had a wide variety of different species that were quadrupedal, like their later true sauropod or Macroninian descendants. So let's take a deeper look into who they found. This seems to be a very true sauropod sort of depiction. That definitely does not seem to be a species of prosauropod. So the newly identified dinosaur lived in what is now Patagonia, Argentina, during the early Jurassic epoch. The ancient creature was a type of Eusauropod, a group of long-necked, strictly herbivorous quadrupedal dinosaurs that thrived from the early Jurassic through the late Cretaceous. Basically, the Eusauropodiae is the one of the larger lineages of sauropods that would group many different families and extend from the early Jurassic, somewhere around 175 to 180 million years ago, to the very end of the Cretaceous, around 66 million years ago. Named Bogwallier alba, the animal is in fact the oldest eusauropod dinosaur known to date. S- Um, hmm. Sauropodomorpha is the first major dinosaurian group that diversified into multiple herbivorous lineages recorded throughout the world, said Dr. Diego Pol from the Museo Paleontologico Egidio Frigilio and Conicat and his colleagues from Argentina, the United States, and Germany.
That's a mouthful.
And it certainly is. The first 40 million years of sauropodomorph evolution are characterized by the coexistence of diverse lineages with great disparity in body size, feeding biomechanics, and locomotion types, ranging from small, less than 10 kilograms or somewhere around 24 pounds, bipedal species to the large, greater than 5 tons quadrupedal early sauropods. You already had different species of prosauropods referring to the earlier sauropodomorphs that could weigh over 4 tons. There weren't many of those species, but they did occur. Okay, by the Middle Jurassic, Eusauropod dinosaurs were the only surviving sauropodomorph lineage. Yeah, but it was a very large lineage of sauropods. But yes, you could say that at that point, that was still a massive die off when it came to the prosauropods. It wouldn't be slightly later in the Jurassic that we see a wide range of different families evolve, like the brachiosaurs, the chimerosaurs, the diplodocids, the titanosaurs, would fill in the gap of these different ecosystems, as well as their very distant relatives, the Eutherian dinosaurs like the stegosaurs and the nodosaurs and ankylosaurs. Okay, let's bring up an earlier species, the Saltriovenator. Saltriovenator. So, this is not a early species of sauropodomorph that I have referred to. This is actually likely a species of theropod dinosaur that hunted earlier species of sauropodomorphs. So, Saltria venator, despite the end of its name, some might distinguish it or think of it, or those that might be somewhat familiar with theropod dinosaurs, might think of it as a megaraptor or possibly a member of the Metracanthosaur lineage of megalosaurs, like Afrovenator, who didn't really have an afro. But um, This distinct animal is actually just a basic member of the beginning of the Coelurosaur lineage of dinosaurs. So this animal is from Italy around 198 million years ago. So it existed in southern Europe towards the very beginning of the Jurassic period, shortly after the mass Triassic extinction, which occurred around 201 million years ago. But this was one of the largest species of theropod to exist at this point. There are different size estimates for the animal. It could range between 11 to 20 feet in length, or pushing around 3.3 meters to about 6 meters, and likely weighing around a ton or um, about 950 kilograms or 2,000 pounds. This individual is a bit too robust for a Saltriovenator. Saltriovenator has a more like something between a Guanlong Tyrannosaur and a Dilophosaurus, sort of a skull structure, as well as an overall body morphology. This animal right here almost correlates with different species of Carcharodontosaurs. It's very robust. It's yeah, as you can see here, I would say though it has much smaller arms compared to its body size than different species of the Dilophosauridae, as well as the Neotheropoda lineage of dinosaurs, such as Cryolophosaurus, Monolophosaurus, and Dilophosaurus. Also quite slender. I'd say in some ways, like skinny legs to an extent. They're very when it comes to this type of theropod, they're almost out of proportion to an extent, at least when it comes to the musculature of these individuals. Also, not necessarily the longest, I'd say, toes compared to their body size. This could be a Saltriovenator, but the skull seems rather off. It's almost like it's a bit closer to a Eustreptospondylus. You also have certain pseudosuchians on the closer to the log in this instance. But Eustreptospondylus belonged to a group of theropod dinosaurs, the megalosaurs, that when it came to that specific species, wouldn't evolve for another 40 million years and existed over in England. We have few fragmentary remains of, well, we have like nearly a complete specimen of a Eustreptospondylus, but it also seems to be of a younger individual from England.
Wait, I have a dancing one.
But it is from the mid Jurassic. Of a sultry venator?
It's dancing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I'm very concerned about his arms. It's not natural, but he probably has some cartoonish power and flexibility. So, yeah, I guess he'll be okay. Now, the problem is that his head structure is very off for a sultry venator.
It looks like a dog.
It does have that kind of a look. That's actually what I was thinking to an extent. Um, I mean, maybe it could be a juvenile. The problem is the crest, the horn-like structures are far too much towards the back of the skull, or say like the back, middle, or central area. Also, right above the eyes. It's not like a Saltria venator. It is interesting as to why, especially during the early Jurassic, there becomes a wide range of different forms of theropod dinosaurs that start evolving different types of crest structures, which very likely were used for attracting mates and intimidating other members of their own species. Maybe even to help with distinguishment when it came to interacting with other species as well. Okay, let's head back to the article. So by the middle, the remains of at least three individuals of Bagualier alba, including a partial skull and cervical vertebrae, were found at the same site in Bagul Canyon in the Cañadón Asfalto Basin, central Patagonia. Sauropods became the dominant group of large herbivores in terrestrial ecosystems after multiple related lineages became extinct towards the end of the early Jurassic. The causes and precise timing of this key faunal change, as well as the origin of EU sauropods, have remained ambiguous, mainly due to the scarce dinosaurian fossil record of this time. It is quite strange. I'd say this tends to happen with a wide variety of small extinction times throughout the Mesozoic era. You have like the Triassic Jurassic boundary, and then you have these middle sections. Technically, you could say throughout every single epoch, and you have like several mass extinctions. You could have had even different certain smaller extinctions occurring within those epochs, but especially like during the middle late Triassic to an extent. So somewhere around 215 to 220 million years ago, you had different dinosaur, Pseudosuchian, and even pterosaur die-offs. And the same goes for the mid Jurassic to an extent. So somewhere around 175 to 180 million years ago, you have different mass extinctions like these prosauropods and the neotheropods that were existing at this point, thriving for somewhere around 30 million years, then mysteriously going extinct. Also, certain early members of the Coelurosaur lineage of dinosaurs. But then, when those early neotheropods, like the Dilophosaurs, would go extinct, you would see the rise of theropod groups such as the Megalosaurs and the Carnosaurs. The Coelurosaurs really wouldn't take off until the Cretaceous period. So, the causes and precise timing of this key faunal change, as well as the origin of eusauropods, have remained. Oh, I already said that. The terrestrial sedimentary secessions of the Canyon Asphalto Basin document this critical interval of dinosaur evolution. So, to shed light on the extinction of sauropodomorphs, Dr. Pohl and co authors examine fossil flora and fauna of the Canyon Asphalto Basin. So, flora referring to fossilized plants, fauna referring to fossilized animals. And it can be of dinosaurs, mammals, pterosaurs, marine reptiles, amphibians. They found evidence for severe perturbations to the ancient climate and a drastic decrease in the floral diversity. Whoa, that is actually quite astounding. I haven't heard of that in a wide variety of different, I'd say smaller extinction events. I've definitely, when it comes to like the end of the Permian period, the end of the Cretaceous period, the possibly end of the Carboniferous too. But in the mid Jurassic, that is shocking because you see a wide variety of larger dinosaurs evolving, yet there's less plant variety. Now, you could still have it where there are less types of plants, and this could mean by um, a few thousand, but there's still several other thousand um, species of plants in existence, and they can still fuel the animals. So, that's still quite shocking. Characterized by the rise of conifers with small, scaly leaves, the Jurassic was a point in time where different types of large trees were evolving, even though you had several large lineages occurring in the Triassic and the Permian, even back to the Carboniferous period. After a massive magmatic event that impacted southern Gondwana between 180 and 184 million years ago, this sounds like it wasn't necessarily occurring all over the world. It was like it wasn't even occurring all over Gondwana, because Gondwana constitutes Antarctica. This was also back when technically Pangea still existed, but it was starting to break apart. Um, you had Antarctica, Australia, Africa, and South America quite closely interconnected to each other. So those are all of Gondwana. But this is mentioning southern Gondwana. So I'm assuming it's mentioning southern South America, the probably southern half of Africa, Australia, and probably all of Antarctica. So that is quite miraculous. They believe that the non-EU sauropodomorphs went extinct after soft vegetation was replaced by much tougher greenhouse vegetation. That's an odd adjective, greenhouse vegetation. I was expecting maybe certain families. That's not very specific. But anyway, um that is interesting. It almost makes sense. The sauropodomorphs, their teeth were designed for plants that weren't as tough to chew. What's also interesting is that as you travel forward in time into the Mesozoic and even to the Cenozoic era, you start looking at different species of herbivores, and what you'll find is that many species are evolving teeth that are suited for much tougher plant material. And as you go further back in time into the early Jurassic, the Triassic, the Permian periods, um, the terrestrial herbivores were meant for feeding on, for the most part, softer species of vegetation. Quite interesting. I guess you could also see something similar. Oh, let's also bring up another dinosaur, a sauropod. Um, VUL. Oh, Volcanodon. VULCANODON. Something that you see with the carnivores as well when you look at the different species of theropods, even when it comes to mammals, is that actually the pterosaurs show this with their beaks as well. Um, uh, oh, their teeth become or their jaws in different families become much more robust, even though certain lineages decided to just stay with the thin and narrow jaw route, or some decide to switch from slightly more robust to more narrow. So it's like a similar correlation to the plant eaters feeding on tougher plants. It's almost as if, like, maybe even the muscle tissue of the herbivores that they're feeding on, as well as the armor, which it is quite evident in like different species of nodosaurs and ankylosaurs and the horned ceratopsians, stegosaurs too. Um, as to why the tyrannosaurs, well, not just them, different members of the Allosauridae lineage, megalosaurs evolved more robust jaw structures. He's not terrible. He's got issues. There's definitely not much food around him.
The giant smile on his face.
Yeah, he's been given a bit of like a chimera sword, or no, not a chimera sword. Who would that be? It's not hitting me what species of dinosaur. It's almost like a ceratopsian footprint to an extent, or foot structure, and a bit of a stegosaur too towards the back, except the toes might be a little long for a
What is
stegosaurus.
with AI?
Um, yeah, it's
There's a funny one.
oh, from a park?
Yep.
This isn't bad. Volcanodon, it is interesting. It's not a member of the Macronenian lineage of sauropod dinosaurs, but it is one of the earliest, almost true sauropods of Sauropoda. And technically, you could say the sauropods too. It's
Okay,
just a less commonly
here's
used
another one.
family name. Okay, this definitely looks like a 1960s sort of apatosaur. You could, I don't know, you could probably go even further back, 1950s, 1940s. What is interesting is the skull structure. It's almost a bit more closer to um like something between a plesiosaur and a diplodocid to a certain extent. I think the legs are a bit I'm not gonna say stocky, just maybe a bit close together. I guess the whole core, maybe it's trying to replicate a juvenile. The tail, I think, is a bit thin. Um, there's also something else. I mean, it's an interesting statue. But a very odd, skull structure. The nostrils, what are they doing at the top of the head? They should be towards the front of the snout. It has a nose, and gosh, they really decided to stay with the, this is, this is one time when you can say progression is good. And this traditional way was, a bit off, but, well, I guess you could say it isn't traditional because 175 million years ago would have still had it on its snout, so never mind. Tradition's always good.
Wait, I have another one.
Just the old sauropod depiction joke. He's still got a um nasal problem. That's it. We got to go with the progression on this. Put it towards the snout. The problem, okay, with the toes on these animals, because I'm not entirely sure when it comes to earlier sauropods like Volcanodon. This is not something that you see on the later species like Brachiosaurus, Brontosaurus, where when you look at their front feet specifically, there is only the thumb claw that is exposed. On these depictions, it's showing them with three other distinct finger claws, which used to be portrayed in earlier representations of sauropods, but has since been refuted. On their back feet, however, they did show around three different claws. So, problem is, I think there's like four or five on those park reconstructions. And they're still fun to look at quite often, especially those noses. That was a bit horrifying. Bogwalia alba and other EU sauropods recorded after the event invariably display characters that may have been critical for their success after this environmental change. Their elongated neck provided maximal feeding envelopes and browsing heights, and their large body size has been related to an expansion of gut capacity and fiber digestibility. Their deep and robust skulls and mandibles indicate high bite force, and their long jaw gape and large and broad teeth with thick enamel greater than 700 um. Um, I need to see what that means exactly. I'm guessing it's referring to the enamel. And extensive shearing wear sets have been intercepted as adaptations to obligate high fiber herbivory and bulk feeding on tough fibrous plant material. I do wonder when it comes to the sauropods in general because it might be correct with the like the sauropods in general, especially the adults, having a more high fiber diet compared to their hatchlings or their youngsters, which would probably have a much higher protein diet. So they're feeding on different species of plants. Okay, this was very interesting to see. Let's head to another part of the Mesozoic era. So, from Sci News, Tyrannosaur hatchlings were as big as a medium sized dog. An international team of paleontologists has examined the fossilized remains of baby Tyrannosaurid dinosaurs found in Alberta, Canada, and Montana, the United States. Let's see what we have here. I don't think this is a T Rex necessarily. This seems to be a bit of an older cousin. It could be, I'm not sure, maybe a Tarbosaurus, but now, granted, at this point, in practically all of the Tyrannosaurs in general, the hatchlings were much more lightly built compared to their adult counterparts or their parents. And there are certain species where they did not change very much throughout their growth. Animals like Xenosaurus and who is the other one? It's not hitting me at the moment, but they remained very thin and narrow throughout their whole life. But I'm also talking about tyrannosaurs that didn't reach much more than maybe 20 feet in length or pushing 6 meters. Now, you could also include different species of tyrannosaurs like one long and D long from the late Jurassic and the early Cretaceous. They didn't reach much more than maybe 10 feet or 3 meters. Oops. So tyrannosaurs were the apex predators of the supercontinent Laurasia in the late Cretaceous epoch and were among the largest terrestrial predators ever. These dinosaurs have garnered considerable interest since their discovery both in the popular and scientific realms. As a result, they are well studied and much is known of their anatomy, diversity, growth, and evolution. It's still questioned quite a bit of it, despite it this family of dinosaurs being some of the most intensely studied. Though there are different lineages of sauropods, ceratopsians, as well as different members of the Allosaur family of dinosaurs that are intensely studied as well and have been since the 1880s. These dinosaurs have garnered considerable interest since in contrast, little is known of the earliest stages of their development. Tyrannosaurid eggs and embryos remain elusive, and juvenile specimens, although known, are rare. They are quite uncommon when it comes to tyrannosaurs. Even with the smaller species, they're not common to find. Eggs, and when it comes to dinosaurs in general, they tend to be not too uncommon, depending on the lineage of long-necked sauropod that you're looking at, especially with different titanosaur individuals. Also, many coming in from South America. There have been certain instances over in South Asia, like with India and Pakistan, with certain nesting sites being discovered even in South Africa with certain species of macroninian sauropods. Hadrosaurs or the duck-billed dinosaurs are much less common when it comes to nesting sites. We have a certain preserved sites, I believe, with the Saurolophus over in Mongolia, which would have existed somewhere around 75 to 80 million years ago. And ceratopsians, the smaller species, they seem to have been a bit more well preserved, but quite rare with the larger species. Let's see. Who should I bring up? Okay, so tyrannosaurs are represented by dozens of skeletons and thousands of isolated bones or partial skeletons, said co author Mark Powers, a PhD student at the University of Alberta. Well, it definitely depends on or the specific species of tyrannosaur. If you're referring to Alberta, Canada, and the late Cretaceous and animals like Albertosaurus. There have been since the year 1884 around 30 different specimens of Albertosaurus that have been discovered over in, I believe, Dry Island Buffalo National Park, and as well as like constituting the Horseshoe Canyon Formation and the what was the other one? Dinosaur Provincial Park Formation. So, we have when it comes to also the skeletons of Albertosaurus, younger individuals as well. Let's pull up, let's see, um, Pentaceratops. So Pentaceratopс. Um, Yeah, so when it comes to the Tyrannosaurus diet in general, many of them, even back in the early Cretaceous, would have fed on likely some species of ceratopsian. It might not have been the case, however, for certain earlier species like Huanglong and Zilong back in the early Cretaceous and the late Jurassic.
Here's a happy one.
They did exist. Yeah, this is a very interesting, it's a very different depiction of a Pentaceratops. Very long horns compared to its body size on this individual. Actually, I'm not sure if it could be a Pentaceratops. Just those horns at the top of the frill seem a bit distinct, but it is possible. There are different species of Pentaceratops. Yeah, it's that seems a bit more realistic. I think it's just a smaller area where those two horns are situated. I think both are good depictions. I think this is a decent model. It could be a painting. Now, the issue is that there should only be three claws and just the two blunt fingers, but those could be representing blunt fingers on the back. And there are four clawed toes on the hind feet. That's good to see. So, Pentaceratops, though, really inhabited different regions of Montana, Wyoming, possibly as far south as New Mexico. It is likely it did range into Alberta, Canada during the late Cretaceous around 74 million years ago and likely coexisted with carnivores like Gorgosaurus and Albertosaurus.
First guy looks like a devil.
Yeah, and the other one looks like a odd dog breed to an extent. But yeah, they just have very weirdly shaped physiques in this depiction. Now the overall frill structure is knocking out the freaky eye structure, especially the one um facing facing your eyes. They're not bad. I say like Pentaceratops also has one of the longest frills and overall skull structures compared to their body size of any land animal, especially when it comes to the dinosaurs. The ceratopsians had the largest heads. Um oh yeah, this is a decently well preserved um ceratopsian and pentaceratops individual. Very exquisitely preserved. And you can even see the upper jaw. The horn's very much intact, just a slight fracture, it seems, of the snout horn. Also, quite a long beak compared to its skull structure. I would say even much more than compared to different species of later ceratopsians, such as Triceratops and even Torosaurus. Though there were certain members of the Protoceratopsidae lineage
You
of
already put
ceratops.
this up?
Yep.
I did?
Yeah, I think it was the second one.
Oh.
It's not a bad depiction. The problem is that its horn seemed possibly a little too wide in diameter. Pentaceratops is quite, I wouldn't necessarily thin, but not very just wide horns in general. Ooh, I don't mind this depiction. Seems like one of the older reconstructions of Pentaceratops. Pentaceratops is always like portrayed or many cases has this like very intimidating sort of ceratopsian. The problem is when it comes to chasmosaurs like Pentaceratops is that they tend to have much thinner frills compared to certain other lineage or members of the chasmosaur lineage, even the centrosaurs like Pachyrhinosaurus and Triceratops. Though it still, in most cases, would have likely protected its neck and the upper shoulder region of the animal when under attack by different Tyrannosaur species. And also, it'd have to be concerned about its own kind as well, considering it's very likely that these animals would have engaged in pretty brutal combats during the breeding season. So, this animal, though, or this individual,
What's this?
yeah, that's not a very Pentaceratops-like horn morphology when it comes to the top. I'd say those 2 horns, facing the bottom of its skull are okay. I think they're a bit wide in diameter, but, those other horns seem a bit off. The whole animal in general looks a little clunky. So I'm guessing this somebody's model? I don't think it's AI.
No, it came. I don't know if it's AI or not. It came off of here.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that. Also, I say when it comes to Pentaceratops in general, some of the shortest forelimbs compared to its hind limbs compared to many species of other ceratopsian dinosaurs. So back to the Tyrannosaur instance. Let's see. But despite this wealth of data for Tyrannosaur biology, the smallest identifiable individuals are aged 3 to 4 years old, much larger than when they would have hatched. Oh, yeah. So this is referring to as larger juveniles. In the new research, Powers and colleagues examined 75 to 71.5 million year old fossilized jawbone, tooth, and claw of baby tyrannosaurids. A perennial tooth and embryonic claw from the Horseshoe Canyon Formation of Alberta are probably attributable to Albertosaurus sarcophagus, which was named Albertosaurus specifically, this tyrannosaur, by Henry Fairfield Osborn back in 1905, despite it being discovered back in 1884. You had a wide variety of other paleontologists also making several studies on this individual. So, like Joseph Burrell, another American paleontologist, Othniel Charles Marsh, Edward Drinker Cope. There were other paleontologists too. Not, I mean, like when I'm referring to back in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, you still have, it's still occurring today. So let's see. From the two medicine formation of Montana, an embryonic jaw with teeth probably pertains to Daspletosaurus horneri. So this is another Daspletosaurus that evolved slightly after Albertosaurus, so likely did coexist at certain points, somewhere around 74 to 73 million years ago. They provide information on the size of Tyrannosaur hatchlings and some preliminary clues to the nesting habits of Tyrannosaurids. The paleontologists found that baby tyrannosaurs were around zero point 0.9 meters or 3 feet long when they hatched. That's actually quite impressive. There were two surprising results. The first is that the small tyrannosaur teeth were distinct from the teeth of older individuals, having not yet developed true serrations along the cutting edge of its teeth, as is iconic of the juveniles all the way through to adults. Wow, that is interesting. Almost like the adults, I would assume, like African painted dogs, would have ventured over and, well, let's say after they finished feeding on a ceratopsian carcass or a hadrosaur and maybe regurgitated some food. So it'd be easier for the youngsters to um, consume. That is interesting. Not developing really serrations. The second was the estimated size of the embryos. The specimen belonging to the claw was estimated to be around 1.1 meters or 3.6 feet long, while that of the jawbone was about 71 centimeters or 2.3 feet. Oh, okay. Wait, it's referring though to the jawbone. Oh, no, the specimen in which the jawbone belonged to. Okay, that was confusing me for a second. That's a much smaller individual. Their findings also suggest that Tyrannosaur eggs, the remains of which have never been found, were around 43 centimeters or 17 inches long. This could aid efforts to recognize such eggs in the future and gain greater insights into the nesting habits of tyrannosaurs. The discovery of embryonic material was a huge find in our efforts to understand how some of the most popular and charismatic dinosaurs began their life and grew to immense sizes. It provides a much needed and until now missing data point depicting the starting point for tyrannosaur growth. I really wonder how old these youngsters were until they started evolving true serrated edges. So, like how long were possibly the adults having to regurgitate food for them? Researchers also found that 3 centimeter or 1.2 inch long jawbone of Dyspleosaurus horneri had distinctive tyrannosaur features, including a pronounced chin, indicating that these physical traits were present before the animals hatched. These bones are the first window into the early lives of tyrannosaurs, and they teach us about the size and appearance of baby tyrannosaurs, said lead author Dr. Greg Funston, a researcher at the University of Edinburgh. We now know that they would have been the largest hatchlings to ever emerge from eggs. They would have looked remarkably like their parents, both a good signs for finding more material in the future.
Is Shouldn't they look like their parents?
Um, you said shouldn't they look like them?
They should.
Well, they would have a tyrannosaur look, but they would still have a very distinct morphology from their parents, considering at this point, especially with Albertosaurus, it would have a much more narrow jaw structure compared to its parents. Also, very thin, like it's showing even in the picture, um, a very thin leg structure, almost like that of a baby chick of many species of birds today. I would say though, chicks, like when you look at ostrich chicks, they're actually quite stocky. It would be different with tyrannosaurs. So even the arms, I mean, are quite like take away the fluff or the plumage, quite thin. I mean, even the adults had relatively muscular arms. So yeah, this is very interesting. When it comes to the whole jaw structure in general, it's almost like a Kizionosaurus, which lived much further north. Okay. Well, let's head to the Cenozoic era, another part of the world. So, from rewildingeurope.com, European bison arrive in the Iberian highlands for the first time. Oh, this is fabulous to hear. I'd say Spain was probably the most southern extent when it comes to much of Europe for bison to naturally roam. Now, possibly if you go back to the Ice Age, they might have extended a bit further south. In a historic step for rewilding in Spain, 9 European bison had been released for the first time in the Iberian Highlands. As part of an international study, they will help unlock vital insights into how bison can restore ecosystems across Europe while also bringing renewed hope and opportunity to the local community of El Recuenco. Sounds like a dinosaur name. Oh, he looks pretty perky. That is a very nice set of horns. I mean, usually, European bison tend to be, I mean, they have their unique horn structure. It's very different from American bison, but this individual, this is quite large. He's very well fed. He has a very good balanced diet. His fur seems pretty good too. I think what's astounding is that he's in the snow in Spain. It does snow in Spain, just not very much. He seems quite cheerful.
So instead of the rain falling on the plains in Spain, it would be the snow.
Yeah, it's a good adjective. So, in a historic milestone for rewilding in Spain's Iberian Highlands, 9 European bison have arrived in the village of El Recuenco in the province of Guadalajara. Sourced from a private estate northwest of Madrid, their presence will support a pioneering research effort led by Rewilding Spain to explore how bison, Europe's last wild bovine and its largest terrestrial mammal, can help to restore and revitalize ecosystems in the Mediterranean and beyond. Occasionally, the orc might be the largest, but we haven't gotten to the natural size of the prehistoric orcs yet. We now just have smaller Spanish bulls roaming certain protected areas over in like the Netherlands, Spain, Poland. Understanding how European bison adapt to the landscapes of the Iberian Peninsula and to other European environments is key to unlocking the benefits the species can deliver for nature, climate, and people. It will also guide and strengthen efforts to accelerate European bison comeback across the continent. Over the last decade, the number of European bison has increased from just over 2,500 to around 9,000 individuals. That is a remarkable increase. This represents a remarkable recovery, considering there were less than 60 individuals alive in zoos and private parks in 1927. Yeah, that is an issue with the European bison, is that there's not a lot of genetic variety in these individuals. What is interesting is that when it comes to certain types of species of mammals throughout the earth, depending on how many there are certain species that reach certain genetic bottlenecks where there are only maybe a little over 100 individuals, but at one point, but because the separate all these different individuals, that small population came from different regions, since they all had different types of genetics, apparently it's like despite the small bottleneck, they still have a lot of genetic variety. But this doesn't seem to be the case, unfortunately, with the European bison. But on the right side, its population is increasing. So this study will support unprecedented research into the true ecological range of the European bison and the species' potential to restore a wide variety of landscapes across Europe, says Pablo Scapira, team leader at Rewilding Spain. So we'll also demonstrate how rewilding can offer new development pathways for rural areas built on meaningful engagement and strong public support. So the 9 bison will spend several weeks into an adaptation enclosure where their health and behavior will be closely monitored. They will then be released into a fenced 400-hectare area of publicly owned woodland, or somewhere around 800 acres. Not huge, but to start, 9 bison, I mean, that's a decent amount of area if you're, fencing it around. Guessing there aren't any wolves here. There are wolves in Spain. It's not a very large population. They're still making a comeback. Let's see, other thing. Also, when it comes to European bison in general, they tend to prefer much more forested areas. I mean, you can find them in certain like open, somewhat grasslands, more of like a shrub grassland sort of mix, compared to like American bison over in North America. Unless you're talking about the wood bison subspecies, which, hensing its name, it's really only feeding in different open forests. So, as the animals begin to roam across the site, they are expected to generate multiple benefits for the 80 strong community of El Recuenco. Wow, that is a very small populated area. The local council, an instrumental partner in the initiative, asked to host the herd in view of its anticipated positive impact on the village, which, like many rural settlements across Spain, has faced significant socioeconomic decline over recent decades. We expect the bison to help reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire outbreaks through their grazing and browsing of the woodland, says Enrique Calada, the mayor of El Recuenco. We are also hoping that this unique and iconic species will attract more visitors to our village, generating new opportunities, jobs, and income for the people living here. That's quite interesting. 9 bison helping fight back against the
Tourism?
fire.
No, it's
Uh,
also saying tourism.
well, that too. Yeah, I bet that would help. So after several weeks in acclimatization enclosure, I'm guessing he was outside. He wasn't being treated like veal. Um, okay, there he is being released. That probably,
Somebody needs a faster lens.
yeah, that's probably his acclimatization area now. So the European bison is a keystone species. Let's see. So, developing a deeper understanding of its capacity to thrive in ecosystems such as those of the Southern Iberian system or Sistema Iberico. and of its influence on vegetation will support more informed decisions about the role the species can play in rewilding across Europe. So let's see. Recent DNA evidence from Cantabria in northwest Spain supports the hypothesis that the European bison was present in the region in the past, although further research is needed to clarify the historical record of the bison genus in this part of Europe, which I believe is, yeah, it's just bison. You had like back in the Ice Age, bison latrifons, bison antiquus. So, regardless of this ongoing debate, the release of bison in Spain and Portugal is well justified. These animals can fulfill. It's just being a little repetitive. See if there's anything else. Yeah, they're definitely imagining a full ecosystem. You'd have bears here too. Okay, so the bison herd released in El Recuenco, which comprises 5 females and 4 males of various ages. Wow. Um, I think that's a bit too many males, though. I mean, you do want the genetic variety, but the problem is that it's almost like too few females for the males. A ride from a private estate in El Espinar, located around 65 kilometers from Madrid. The adult animals have lived on the estate since arriving from Poland and the Netherlands 3 years ago. Of course, they came from. Actually, you know what? I'm actually a bit almost surprised. That's quite interesting. So I guess these animals have been through a lot. While um, while the younger individuals were born there. As a result, the herd is already socially cohesive and well adapted to environmental conditions in inland Spain. Following their release from the enclosure, members of the Rewilding Spain team will track the movement and behavior of the bison in the field, making use of GPS collars attached to the animals. So let's see, is there anything else? Yeah. Oh, huh. Central Spain. I guess I wasn't hitting me. I was thinking of the northern part of the country. So the bison study launched by Rewilding Spain also brings together the University of the Basque Country, the University of Manchester, and ECONOVO Research Center affiliated with Aarhus University in Denmark. Through wide-ranging scientific analysis, it will assess the stress levels of the El Recuenco herd throughout the year. It will also examine the composition of the animal's diet, which will be entirely natural. That's funny.
What else are they eating?
Yeah,
They've got Twinkies.
they're they're just munching on the native grasses and shrubs in the area. What are you gonna do? Stick in some pound cake? Um oh, cubes like for cattle. I get it. So, collaboration with international organizations, including other members of the Rewilding Europe network, will see this research replicate in other bison populations across Europe, from Spain to Azerbaijan. I think that's Western Asia. But okay. It's like around Georgia and Armenia, just south of southwestern Russia, and Scandinavia via the Netherlands, Poland, and Romania. Is it Norway that got bison recently? I don't know. But they haven't been native to, or they've been extinct in Norway for. Wait a second. If it is Norway, I'm not sure if they were ever native to Norway. Sweden, it's been about 6 to 7,000 years since bison have gone extinct, and Denmark possibly a little more recent. This will give the study team and wider rewilding community deeper insight into the way European bison adapt to different geographical landscapes and environmental conditions. Parallel study will also research the impact of bison on woody vegetation. Okay, so yeah, they seem. I think it's them. Like these are the individuals. They seem ready to start eating.
Ready, set, munch.
I mean, basically. The launch of the bison study has been made possible by the commitment and proactive mindset of El Recuenco's council and residents, who recognize the importance of keystone species such as the European bison in rewilding. They have also witnessed the growing benefits brought by the release of large herbivores, including taros, Spanish bulls, and Przewalski's horses at other rewilding sites across the Iberian highlands, where the Rewilding Spain team currently manage more than 20,000 hectares of natural grazing, or about 40,000 acres. The Council of El Recuenco, which has made the woodland available for the bison to graze, has also led an extensive dialogue process with residents, organizing talks, meetings, and site visits to build broad social consensus around the initiative. The woodland will still be used for other activities such as timber extraction, hunting, and mushroom picking, as well as recreational pursuits and wildlife observation by local villagers and nature enthusiasts. That's funny. Mushroom picking. I mean, that's very important, but I just found that kind of funny. Huh.
I think they're trying to advertise their town.
Yeah, it seems that way. Um,
We found other
maybe it was a bit of a
articles where
drought.
it seemed like that's what they were doing. The article was based around the town for, I'm assuming, tourism.
Yeah, basically. I was just I wonder if they took the pictures in the morning. It seemed quite misty. Here it seems like maybe yeah, I guess just later in the day. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. And happy International Pro Sauropod Day. And remember, nothing is better than all animals all the time.